Okay, so let's have a look at the vocab together. So the first one we're going to look at is a very polite expression for elderly people, which is 老人家, 老人家. So that's this one here. Um, and when you're actually talking to them, it means sir or madam. And say, for example, if you're going to ask them for directions in the street or something like that, then and of course you don't know their name, you could address them as 老人家, 老人家. If you're talking about somebody in the third person, you're telling, a friend of yours about an old person that you met somewhere, talking about them in the third person, you could also refer to them as 他老人家. So that's actually quite polite. Right. So the second word that we're going to look at is this new measure word, 知, 知. Okay, and as it shows here, it's a measure word for birds, cats, and little dogs. So, for example, you would say 一只鸟，两只猫，三只小狗. Now you can see the words for birds, cats, and little dogs or dogs in the list. But if you want to say a small or a young animal of any kind, you add the character 小 before it. Okay, so for example, little dog is 小狗. If it's a little cat, it would be 小猫, and so on. Alright. Oh, the other thing also I pointed out in the lecture the other day is it's not very clear from here, but if you look at the left-hand side of the character go, I've drawn that very badly because I'm using a mouse. And also with mile for cat, you'll notice that the left-hand side, the radical, it's what's called a animal paw or claw radical. So for animals that have paws or claws, often that radical is used in the character. So for example, horse won't have that because horse doesn't have paws or claws. Okay, so we've got our verb here, yang, which we touched on earlier on when we were talking about the grammar, and that can be used obviously together with animals, and there it means to raise. It can even mean to breed as well, but if it's used in the context of flowers, well then of course it's grow. Moving along, so we've got the particle guo, which we've already talked about in the section earlier on grammar, and here's the words for flowers and birds. The thing about the pronunciation with these words for, say, flower, huar, if you're not comfortable with that sound, just leave it off and say hua, hua, and the same for bird, 鸟, 鸟. Now I'm not sure if any of you will remember, but in the lesson on Chinese Island, where you went to the virtual restaurant and you had to make the virtual dumplings, and you had to also ask for directions to get to the virtual market, I think one of the responses that Jingjing gave was that the market was on Niar Lu. Niar Lu. So here's that word, here's the name of the street, Niar, and of course the word for street is Lu, so it was actually Bird Street. Moving along, we've got a new conjunction word which means but. So a conjunction word is kind of like, a connecting word that connects two different clauses in a sentence and two different ideas. 但是, 但是. But of course, you can also use one that we've already learned, 可是, 可是. Essentially, they're used in the same way. Right, so we have this new expression, 听说. Actually, you only need to worry about the first two. The second two are the complex traditional characters. 听说, 听说. So you can say, I've heard that the father of Kate's baby is not William. 我听说, 我听说. That wasn't very nice, but and it's not true, but there you go. One thing I want to say about this verbal expression, okay, 听说, and this will be important later on, and there's another verb further down the list here which I'll use to contrast with this. 听说 is made up of the two characters 听, to listen, and 说, to speak or to say. So this is a verbal phrasal word which is made up of two verbs. Okay, that's quite important. With the one that we're going to look at shortly, it's made up differently, and there are times when you're going to have to actually split the two characters up, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Now we have the expression 有的, 有的 meaning some. So for example, you can say 有的人, some people, 有的人, some students, I'll leave that one to you, some universities, and you can do that one yourself. You might say some countries, for example. So this is a new word. Okay, 国家, 国家. So 有的国家, some countries. Just out of interest, 国家, the word for country, is made up of two characters. The first of which is country, okay, 国, and the second one is 家, family or home. So for the Chinese, that's a very important concept, that the country, the nation, is like home or the family. Now I need to remember to make this big, otherwise you won't be able to see it. So I'm just going to check on the screen over there. That looks big and clear. The other thing that you can say with 有的 is sometimes, and the expression is 有的时候, 有的时候. So that's a very handy one to use. Okay, then we have our cat, and I just want to make sure that that is, yeah, I might make that even bigger because you may not be able to see it clearly. I suspect you probably won't anyhow. Anyhow, we'll push on, we'll do our best. So mao for cat, 一只猫. And then there is the general word for animals, okay, which is 动物, 动物. And it's made up of the two characters. The first one is 动, which means to move. 物, it means things of any kind. Anything that exists in the universe can be considered as a 物. So these are things that move. 动物. This next one is a very useful expression, very colorful in some ways, so it can be an adjective, a verb, or a noun. We'll look at it as an adjective and a verb. If we say that, for example, this person is a troublemaker, they're a problem, they're a pain in the ass, to put it colloquially, we can say 这个人很麻烦. 这个人很麻烦. If something is difficult to do, okay, it creates a real headache trying to do it, you can say 这件事很麻烦. 这件事很麻烦. The other way that can be used is as a verb, and this is a kind of a useful one to know as well. If you, for example, need somebody to help you to do something, they're in a position where they have the power to do it and you need to kind of, ask a favor. We have learned a word before which was 请, 请, which means please, but it also means to ask politely. This is another word that you can use, which is in some ways maybe even more polite. So if I want to say, please help me, I could say 请你帮助我. Or if I want to be even politer, I could say 麻烦您帮助我. 麻烦您帮助我. Right, moving along, we have this expression here, 时间, 时间, which is time. Now this is a different kind of time to the 时候, which we saw up here. Okay, 时间 is usually referring to a quantity of time, or a duration of time, whereas 时候 is referring to a point in time. So there's the difference there. Now moving on to the next one, 自己, 自己, oneself. Okay, oneself. So if you wanted to turn that into, for example, myself, myself, all you have to do is add 我 before 自己. If you wanted to say yourself, then you just add 你, 你自己, 我自己, 你自己, you, yourself, and me, myself. So 自己, it's a very handy one to know. Number 18, 办. 办, it means to do, but it has a fairly kind of specific use. So for example, you can't use it to say to do homework. To do homework would be 做, 作业. but you can use ban to express doing something which is, this is an expression that we've learned in the past, which means some business, some matters, some affairs. 是, which is this character here. Okay, 是. So you'll often see these two characters together. 办事, 办事, meaning to take care of, to carry out, to conduct some kind of business, or to take care of some kind of matters. Right, this next one, I'm just thinking I might get rid of that just for the moment, is the expression to be familiar with. 对 something 熟悉. 熟悉. Now, as it says there, 对 is the preposition, which means to. Okay, so it's like in the English expression to be. Sorry, I'll take that back. It's, in fact, it's like the English expression with. Okay, to be familiar with. We can't just say I am familiar Beijing. We need a connecting word between familiar and Beijing. I am familiar with Beijing. So in Chinese, in fact, the connecting word is 对. Okay, that's why it's called a preposition. Alright, so you would say, I am familiar with Beijing. 我对北京熟悉. For example, if you wanted to say, I am familiar with Australian history. So we've got the word for history here, 历史. 历史. You would say, 我对澳大利亚历史熟悉. Okay, so I'm familiar with Australian history. Right, moving along, we have a word here. It's a measure word, 些, 些, and it means a few or some. And as I think I mentioned last semester, one of the interesting characteristics of Chinese nouns is that you often can't tell from the word or the character whether it's singular or plural, because in Chinese they don't distinguish. When they write the characters, it doesn't change regardless of whether it's singular or plural, unlike English where we have different spelling. So one of the ways that you can tell if a noun is singular or plural, of course, is to add a quantity before it. But the other way also is to use 些. So, for example, if we wanted to say these books, all right. So I have the word 书, 书 for book, and I wanted to indicate that it was plural, and it was the ones here that maybe I'm pointing to. So I would say 这些书. Just put in the pinyin for that. Okay, 这些书. These, 这些. Or if they were those books, I would say 那些书. 那些书. Right, moving along. Make sure I make this one big enough. Hopefully that's clear, nice and clear. And we can also say 一些, 一些. Let me get a different color. 一些. So we could say, for example, some people, 一些人. Somebody asked me in the lecture, well, can I say, 有的人? What's the difference? If we say 一些人, we're talking more about quantity of people. Okay, we're not being absolutely specific, but we're saying there's more than one and there's less than, say, 5. 一些人. If we say 有的人, that's not quantity specific. It's not referring to quantity at all. I mean, it could be 100 people. It could be 1,000 people out of 10,000. Who knows? So I guess that's the main difference. This next one, which is number 21. 照片, 照片. Alright, so that's a noun and it means photo or photograph. And if you want to, use that word to say to take a photo, well, in fact, there is an expression a bit further down the list, but you would need another verb because that is a noun, photo. Number 22. Deng, deng meaning to climb. To climb. And generally, as it says here, it would be referring to climbing a mountain or climbing something large. So maybe, a tall building, something like that. You could use deng, but you wouldn't use it, say, for example, to climb onto a chair or a table. Shan, shan, we learned that last semester when there was a lesson where they were talking about places in China, and I think the female character said something about, her home was at Longshan, Dragon Mountain. So if you want to say climb a mountain, you would say deng shan, deng shan. Also, I believe that's the expression for mountain climbing, the activity. Deng shan. Now, this brings us on to this next expression, which is a very well-worn phrase in China. 不到长城非好汉. Now, this was the expression that was coined by Chairman Mao. It sounds like, it reads like kind of classical Chinese type expression, but it's not really. It's something that that he made up. It's an expression that is used a lot in China. And the translation here is, you're not a true man if you haven't conquered the Great Wall. So, 好汉, I think it's got it down here. It does, yeah. 好汉, true or brave man. The thing about this expression is, somebody asked me, oh, well, does that mean then you can't use it for women? And no, that's not right. You can actually use it for women, and in that case, they're not literally saying that you'll be, a man if you climb the Great Wall. It's not intended that way. Couple of other things is the word for the Great Wall, which is chang, cheng, chang, cheng. So we've got the character here, cheng, cheng, and that forms part of the word cheng shi, which is also on our vocab list. So Cheng actually is, in a sense, the physical city, if you like. And in the old days in China, most of their cities were surrounded by walls. So sometimes Cheng also has the meaning of wall. So in China, they refer to the Great Wall as the Long Wall. Chang Cheng, Chang Cheng. There's the Cheng there. Now, Fei, it's not a word that you guys will probably use all that often. What it actually means, as it says there, is not, okay? Or alternatively, in Chinese it would be 不 or 不是. Fei is, I guess, a classical word, and I think it's deliberately included in this particular expression to make it have more of a classical feel to it. Yeah, so basically it means 不 or 不是. Moving along, we've got number 24, which is 别的, 别的, other. Now you can say 别的人, other people. You can say 别的学生, other students. You could say 别的 university. I'll leave that one to you. Okay, number 25, 欢迎, 欢迎. So basically, as it says, it means to welcome someone. It's a verb, but it's also the thing that you say when you're welcoming people into your home, or in the case of, say, a restaurant with a waitress there, she will say, 欢迎, 欢迎. Generally speaking, they'll say it twice, 欢迎, 欢迎, because that suggests, enthusiasm. And if any of you have ever gone back to the virtual restaurant on Chinese Island, and if you say hello to the virtual waitress Jing Jing in the restaurant there, she will say this to you, 欢迎, 欢迎. Okay, so because that's a standard thing to say in restaurants and other commercial enterprises in China when they're welcoming their customers. This next one, number 6, this is an interesting and a useful one. Oops, I've lost my ability to write on the screen now. Oh no, there we go. There we go. It means if. Alright, and it's got an interesting kind of structure. So it's got two parts. First part is 钥匙, and the second part is 的话. Okay, and you can see them broken up down there. Now they both mean they both mean if. Okay. So we'll have a look at this in the dialogue, but basically you put whatever it is. So for example, if you want to say if you are going to Beijing, 要是你去北京的话，要是你去北京的话. So you'll notice that the thing that the if is referring to goes in the middle there. Now, as I'll talk a little bit more about later on when we look at the dialogues, you can leave off parts. You can sort of use just part of that expression. So, for example, you could say, 要是你去北京, whatever. All right, that's fine. That means if you go to Beijing. You could also say, 你去北京的话, if you go to Beijing. All right, so you leave off the 要是. So that expression we'll have a look at more in the dialogues shortly. I have a feeling I might have missed some vocab, so I might go back shortly and just have a look. But let's do this for the moment. Right, number 27. I'm hoping that this is clear. Number 27. Pay to accompany. To accompany. Alright, so it means to go along with. And we'll look at that in the dialogues because there's a good example of it there. Now we've got number 28. 得. So this is what's called an optative verb. So what that basically means is that this has to go together with another verb. Okay, it has to go together with a proper verb. And it always comes before the other verb. Okay, and when it does come before that, this character means to have to, must. Alright, and we'll see a good example of that in the dialogue. It's known as a 多音字, 多音字, meaning that this character you will see in other circumstances where it has a different role, a different meaning, and a different pronunciation. But for the moment, we'll just learn it this way. Right, so the next one is plane ticket, and that's made up of 飞机 and 票. So the word for plane is 飞机, and 飞机 literally means flying machine. 飞机. The other thing with 飞机票, plane ticket, you can also leave off the fee if you want and just have 机票. 机票. People will then know that you're talking about a plane ticket. So the word ticket can then be used with things like train, 火车票. Or we've learned the word for bus before, 公共汽车, and if you add 票 afterwards, it becomes a bus ticket. Right, moving on to the supplementary words, we have the conjunction 所以. So conjunction again is one of those words that sits between or links two clauses in a sentence. So you might say, for example, it's raining outside, so I'm not going to go out. All right, and so 外面下雨，所以我不出去. So it sits at the beginning of the second clause. We have this expression here, number 31, 别人, which is very similar to the one before, 别的人. Okay, so you can just say 别人, other people. But if you're going to use a different noun after 别, for example, students, you have to put the 别的 学生. Number 32, 拍照. So this is the second type of verb that when I mentioned before, there were two types of verb. This is the second type, and the difference is, with this type of verb, it's made up of 拍, character 拍, and 照. 拍 is a proper verb, means to shoot, as in a picture or a video, and 照, which in this case is a noun, meaning a photograph. So this verbal phrase is made up of a verb and a noun, and there are certain circumstances where you're going to need to split them and put something in between. But we'll deal with those when we get to them. And then there are some proper place names which I won't go through with you now. let's have a look here. Yep. Well, very quickly. I mean, Gugong, the Imperial Palace. That's that one there. Great place to visit. I think I've been there 15 times so far, and I still reckon I haven't seen it all. And then Yiheyuan, which is the Imperial Summer Palace. That's worth a visit. That's in Beijing. Those two are both in Beijing. Changchun we've dealt with. Shanghai we've dealt with before. Xi'an, which is famous for the terracotta warriors, and then Chengdu, which is in Sichuan province. I'm just going to skip back and see. I have a feeling that I may have actually missed. So I just want to check, see if I've actually missed. No. Okay. So I would say basically I think we've covered everything. So I will stop this video here and then I'll make a separate one for the dialogues. 谢谢。